Welcome back to the Lowdown Extra, everybody. A special mini episode for you this Wednesday. The main video will be dropping as usual tomorrow, but we thought we'd jump into the studio to react to the breaking news as of yesterday that Liverpool have made it their intention to approach Alexander Isak. Of course, they haven't submitted a bid yet and are well aware that Newcastle have him not for sale this summer. Doogie, what's going on here? What's your take on this?
Well, it's been a pretty crazy 24 hours. My head was spinning yesterday. I can't imagine what Newcastle fans were feeling as well, because this is kind of their worst nightmare. As a friend and a former colleague, George, put in our group chat quite effectively, Liverpool are saying, sell us your best player or we'll target your top target, because they do want Hugo Ekitike, who had been speculated over the weekend, was close to joining Newcastle. At least they bid for him, £70 million they supposedly bid for him. Eintracht Frankfurt holding out for closer to 85, which you imagine, given the clubs, both their clubs spending in the last few years, Liverpool and Newcastle, Liverpool probably have more leeway to get there as well. So Newcastle could end up with a scenario where they have to decide, do we sell Liverpool Alexander Isak to ensure we can get Hugo Ekitike, the kind of ideal replacement for Alexander Isak, whether it's this summer or in the future, or do we keep hold of Alexander Isak, lose the opportunity to sign Hugo Ekitike, and then Alexander Isak might well leave Newcastle in a few seasons to come, which I think is quite crucial on this, because if I was Newcastle, I'd be much, much more willing to sell Alexander Isak abroad in a couple of years' time than Liverpool this summer. They've just qualified for the Champions League. They've just lost Callum Wilson as well, who's departed Tyneside after 5 seasons there. Do they want Alexander Isak to leave this summer as well? I think that's a huge blow to morale, having already seemingly, well, definitely missed out on João Pedro. They've missed out on Brian Mbeumo as well. Do they want to countenance the sale of their star player who had such a phenomenal season last year? I'm not so sure. And in terms of where Isak could go in the future, Real Madrid, Mbappe and Vinicius Junior's relationship wasn't particularly seamless last year. Barcelona will need to eventually replace Lewandowski. Kane will eventually retire or move on from Bayern Munich, you'd have thought as well. So there will be options for Isak in the future. But before we get into where we predict him going, I mean, Mikey, it's worth pointing out just how special Isak's campaign was last year. He was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, he really went from strength to strength last season, didn't he? 23 goals in the Premier League, which was only topped by Mo Salah, having an all-timer of a season. The season before, he'd got 27 in all competitions, but that was a bit of a down year in this Eddie Howe project at Newcastle, whereas this season, of course, they got their hands on a trophy, at long last, and Isak was pivotal to that, of course, scoring in the semis against Arsenal, scoring in the final against Liverpool in what was, a team performance that was, will go down in history, really, Newcastle-wise, dismantling Liverpool in the way that they did. So, yeah, it's no surprise that he has been touted for big moves over the last few months. Of course, Newcastle's stance has always been incredibly clear that he is by no means up for sale. But you do think, if a crazy offer were to come in, say 130 plus million, they do obviously have to think about it. Like you say, Dukes, is it more beneficial to wait a year when he only has 2 years left on his contract? So would maybe maybe they'd be forced to lower their price to 70, 80, 90 million pound mark. Would they rather do that and sell to, say, Barcelona, Real Madrid, if they were to come calling? Maybe. But equally, with Ekitike, who probably is as much of an Isak replacement as you can find out there in terms of someone who possesses some of the unique assets that Isak has, then you are building for the future there with someone who's 22, 23 years old at this moment in time. Isak still, is pretty young himself as well. So, yeah, I would, in some ways, I kind of agree with your sentiment. I think Newcastle are right to hold firm at this moment in time. I don't think that this is a saga that's going to be wrapped up in a week. I can see this rolling on all summer, if I'm honest, unless a deal is thrashed out for Ekitike in the next couple of days. I think it kind of hinges on that. Can Newcastle get a deal done for Ekitike? And if so, does that, where does that leave them exactly? Because then the ball's kind of in Liverpool's court. I think from an outside perspective, initially it's like, oh well, Liverpool seem to be in the driving seat here, but actually, if Newcastle can get to an advanced stage with negotiations over Ekitike, then they kind of hold the cards, because they can basically decide if they want to cash in on Isak now or not. If they can make a deal work for Ekitike right now, then they have the means to. Of course, this happens. It's kind of weird discussing Liverpool striker targets amid the backdrop of the tragedy that's hit the club over the last few weeks. So, yeah, it's kind of a weird time to be discussing Liverpool transfer business in general. Luis Diaz, his proposed move away, by them rejecting a bid from Bayern Munich as well. So we do have to hold that in mind. But nevertheless, it does seem like they have intentions to go for Isak this summer, especially with Darwin Nunez's future also in the balance too. And if they were to land Isak, where would this stand as a transfer window for Liverpool?
I think it'd be right at the very top of all-time transfer windows, to be honest. I think you've already signed a Premier League ready left-back in Milos Kerkez, who probably looks like the outstanding prospect in that age range in left-backs in Europe almost, alongside probably Nuno Mensch and some others. You've signed Jeremy Frimpong. You've signed Florian Wirtz, who is one of the outstanding, if not the outstanding young player in Europe. And obviously, Alexander Isak was a top 5 striker in the world last year. I think it's fair to say Lewandowski had a real great year. Mbappe's goal scoring was very solid. Kane was Kane as usual. Ousmane Dembele was probably the only clear out-and-out 9, if he can even be considered that had a better year than Alexander Isak. It was really that special. And for Isak's perspective, Liverpool are a really attractive offer as well. You've got the opportunity to work with a Premier League all-time great in Mo Salah, a Premier League all-time great in Virgil van Dijk, the likes of Florian Wirtz, the likes of Alexis McAllister, Dominic Szoboszlai, so many options in that forward line. So maybe he does feel like now is the perfect opportunity to go join the Premier League champions, who are, I still say, the favourites for next year as well, and who have had a very good chance going forward in the Champions League as well. Whereas in a year's time, do Barcelona still have the financial manoeuvrability to land an Alexander Isak? Do Real Madrid want to countenance the sale of Vinicius Junior or Kylian Mbappe and all the investment that they've put into both those players in wages? Are Bayern quite ready to get rid of Harry Kane? I'm not so sure. So I think what would require this transfer to go through is Alexander Isak to hand in the transfer request and really force this move, which could happen. It could happen. I'm not sure whether it necessarily will. But there is a huge gulf in terms of Premier League readiness between Alexander Isak and Hugo Ekitike. It's a big ask for Hugo Ekitike, who I think is a phenomenal player, a great prospect, the outstanding young striker in the Bundesliga over Benjamin Šeško for me, much more well-rounded. But it's still a huge ask for him to go into a Liverpool or a Newcastle and be expected to get anywhere close to Alexander Isak's output next season.
Do you think, though, with Mo Salah still at the top of his game at Liverpool, with Liverpool still able to rely on him in attack, with Florian Wirtz coming in as well, who is a great provider of goals and assists, just an amazing final third operator, is there something to be said that with Isak clearly a lot harder to get out of Newcastle than Ekitike out of Frankfurt, with the Premier League season just weeks away now and pre-season kicking off? Would it be more beneficial for Liverpool just to swoop in and give Frankfurt, meet Frankfurt's asking price, have Ekitike there, who is a bit more of a project player, but like you say, with a world-class attack around him, and with a manager at the top of his game coaching him, that feels like more of the Liverpool move, doesn't it? I know, like, they spent huge on Florian Wirtz this summer, but he is super young. For me, that Ekitike, the Ekitike links feel more Liverpool. They feel more FSG.
They definitely do. They feel more Michael Edwards for sure. But it's not some sort of hidden gem. It's not a bargain transfer like they pulled out in the past for Alexis McAllister or Diogo Jota, for example, in the past under Michael Edwards. So the gap between Ekitike and Isak, I think, is more than £40 million at the moment. I think £85 million for Ekitike, which is what Frankfurt are asking for, is quite a lot of money, considering that they bought him for, I think it was £14 million last summer. And yes, he had a difficult spell at PSG, but he's got some experience of a top club. He's played very well for Frankfurt for the last 18 months. both alongside Omar Marmoush and by himself in the back half of last year. But you're still asking a striker with not that much top experience at that level, with that expectation, to join a Premier League club and instantly hit the ground running. And I do agree with you, a lot of the tools are there around you, but you're also going into a club in mourning who have just lost a key member of their dressing room, a key member of their squad, which, I mean, some would say might galvanise them for next season, but it could also just be a really difficult environment to go into as a young player trying to adapt to a new country as well. And, you know, the thoughts of Diogo Jota won't be far away throughout the entire Premier League next year, let alone at Liverpool as well. So if I was Liverpool, Hugo Ekitike is the most similar setup to Alexander Isak in terms of profile of player. But if there's a £40 million difference or so with Alexander Isak and Hugo Ekitike, I would really push for Isak. And potentially, you know, obviously I'm not trying to advocate for tapping up, but if you could persuade him in some way to throw his toys out the pram or kick up a bit of a fuss and realise that player power is ultimately what's going to get this deal done, then I think that is the more attractive offer by a distance.
Yeah, and I guess from Isak's perspective, then to finish off with one last question, what would be, you know, what would be, if you were Isak, what would you want to do? Would you want to push for a move to the Premier League champions at this moment in time? Let's remember, Newcastle do have Champions League football next season. You know, staying at Newcastle, you know, still a very, very attractive option. Absolutely loved at St James's Park, playing under a manager who's, you know, has his full trust in you. Would you push for a move to Liverpool, or do you think, okay, next year, 2 years left of my contract, there could be other clubs in Europe who might be easier to get to? You know, do you bank on maybe there being an opportunity at Real Madrid or Barcelona or Bayern Munich?
You're potentially appealing to my more mischievous side as a Sunderland fan as well. This is a difficult question for a Sunderland fan to answer non-biasedly. I think, to be honest, most players that didn't grow up in England, their dream is to play for Real Madrid or Barcelona. And I think there's a very decent chance that Alexander Isak would be able to do that in the next 2-3 years. So if I was him right now, I'd probably do another year with Newcastle in the Champions League, guarantee yourself potentially more wages in a year's time, because none of those clubs will be paying as big a transfer fee because you're 1 year less down on your contract, and go and play for the biggest clubs in the world. Like, Liverpool is a very attractive offer for sure. Look, most successful club in English football history. You know, their fans will argue the largest as well. They are primed for a title assault next year. But Real Madrid and Barcelona, as shown by Trent Alexander-Arnold's decision, don't come around all that often. And there's potential that both could be in for you at the same summer, which I can't remember the last time that both clubs have been looking for a similar style of player in the same summer as well. So me personally, and I can't believe I'm saying this as a Sunderland fan, I'd stay at Newcastle.
Interesting. So there we have it. Let us know your thoughts about the Alexander Isak situation in the comments below. Can you see him pushing for a move to Liverpool? Can you see Liverpool coming in with a bid? What do you make of the Hugo Ekitike situation as well? Let us know down below, and we'll catch you on the Lowdown tomorrow.